With loads of business advice flooding the industry, it has never been harder to see the path to success. And you can't take action if you don't have clarity. Get clear on the actionable tips and strategies that will help to scale your business here on Masters in Clarity, the podcast that brings you clarity around messaging, business growth, digital marketing, personal development, and the business owner's journey to success. Let's join our guide, the master of turning clarity into action and lasting impact, Dolores Hirschmann.
I am so excited to bring you Mamie Kanfer Stewart, who is the host of the Modern Manager podcast and founder of Meteor, a training firm focused on productive meetings. Mamie spends most of her time helping managers and entrepreneurs develop the habits, skills, and mindsets they need to effectively manage themselves and their teams. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever been called to a meeting that you have no idea why you're showing up for the meeting? Or are you hosting meetings and you're not seeing neither the results nor the outcomes coming out of those meetings? Well, listen into my interview with Mamie, because she is going to bring us her insights and knowledge around helping people really make the most of their teams, how they support, interact, and organize the work with their teams to get the outcomes and goals that they want for the business. So tune into this episode. You don't want to miss it. So Mamie, how long has it been since we last spoke? We were just saying this. It feels like it was like yesterday, but like 2-3 years ago, right?
I think it must be, because my show is coming up on 200 episodes. And I think you were still in the
first 100.
100. Yeah.
Yes. That's amazing. That's amazing. How is that show going?
Wonderful. I am loving being the host of The Modern Manager. I feel like I learn something every time I get to talk to people like yourself. So it's been just a wild ride and a lot of fun.
So let's talk about that. How did you get to this modern manager path? I mean, I always ask the same question. Tell me your clarity journey, which is kind of like an oxymoron, because sometimes you think clarity journey. No, there was no clarity. There was a lot of confusion that brought me to where I am, and I'm kind of clear, but not really. So whether it was totally crystal clear or not so much, how did you arrive to today?
Oh my gosh. I definitely had one of those journeys that doesn't make any sense on paper. It was not so clear at all. I started as an artist. I went to art school and have a degree in ceramics and art history, a BFA. And thought I wanted to be an artist. And I discovered along the path that really, I love being a maker, but art is not the thing that I want or need to make. I do love crafting, but it wasn't actually about making art. It was just about being a maker. And through kind of a variety of almost moments of luck, where I got to work inside my family business and learn how organizations work, and then I worked in a nonprofit, I kind of stumbled into this place of realizing that the other thing I really love to do was what I call kind of translating, taking ideas, frameworks, concepts that are out in the world and helping people make sense of them in their own work, in their own lives, so that other people can kind of take advantage of these skills, these ideas, these frameworks, and activate them in their work so they can be more effective, they can be a better manager, they can be a better colleague, a better parent, whatever it is. And then combining those two things is where my podcast came out.
And I love that. It's almost like people are your medium.
Yeah. It's really like it's taking these ideas and helping people apply them in a way that's like molding people into a better version of themselves. Yeah, I could see that.
I mean, let me just pause here, because you're saying something that is very important, especially for younger generations that are still in that thinking mode of, okay, I like to make things, so I'm going to be an artist, or I like to do math, so I'm going to be an accountant. And the world has shifted in so many ways that I love your kind of exploration and discovery that being a maker or a creator or a creative, call it an artist, like they're all kind of similar words of I create something out of nothing in some way. It's kind of like an essence of most successful people. I think we hit on something.
Yeah. I mean, like there's so many thoughts little bubbling around in my head that, I think we all have that creative spark in us, right? Like when we're kids, we dance, we sing, we draw, we build sandcastles, right? We make up stories and play make believe. So we all have that. And it's almost like continuing to hold that as we get older and honing in on the form of creativity or the form of expression or the form of making, whatever it is, that most resonates for you. So, right, it's not that we all have to be painters or we all have to be bakers, and find that thing, but we all should have something that helps us tap into that. And then we can bring that into whatever job we have, right? We can bring it into whatever career path we take.
Yeah, because in 2022, if creativity is not embedded in your day to day, I don't know how we would have navigated COVID. Like every accountant, doctor, artist, or teacher had to go way deep inside and say, how do I navigate this and be creative? And there's so many amazing success stories of people who figured it out in a way that, we had never done it before. So let's just shift into, okay, so you're a maker and this medium or this space that you're making is this capacity to help people or leaders or managers be more impactful, more powerful, lead better, create better at the end of the day, right? So as a founder of Meteor, let's talk about that work. What happens there? Who do you have an impact on, and how do you do that?
Yeah. So, well, first I want to make a quick distinction because for a while I thought that I wanted to be an executive coach, that was really the way to do this work. And I still do executive coaching and I do really enjoy it. I love getting to work one-on-one with people and see them transform. But I also realized that being an executive coach wasn't being a maker in the way that fed my soul. And that being a podcaster was actually the way to create, being a course creator, making workbooks. It sounds so silly, but those were the things that I could really sink my teeth into in a way that was more scalable so I could help more people and really fed into this desire to physically make something in a way that was more on the artsy side. So all of that is to say that I bring all those things together, and the work that I do with Meteor and with the Modern Manager is really designed to help managers in particular be their best version of themselves and create a work environment where their team gets to be their best selves and do their best work. And that sometimes comes in the form of training people, training around effective meetings, since that is one of the most important jobs a manager has, is to bring their team together to collaborate effectively. And we know, especially after 2 years of Zoom meetings, how horrible meetings can be and the terrible costs and they take on people. Also through to all other kinds of things, like how do people delegate and how do you give feedback and how do you create a culture of inclusion? I mean, so many different aspects of being a manager. And I get to work with my clients on that wide variety of things. And hopefully they're then impacting their entire team and potentially their entire organization.
I love that. And so you've been doing this for a while, and 2020 took us for a loop. How did you navigate 2020? What was the impact in your business? Many of my guests, their businesses have been thriving since 2020. Was that your experience as well? What shifted or what changed?
Yeah, my business experience was kind of surreal in that it didn't actually change all that much. What changed was what we talked about. Okay. So I was already meeting with all of my coaching clients virtually before that. And I was already podcasting, which I do from home. So there wasn't a lot of in-person that I was doing other than speaking at conferences occasionally and leading some in-person workshops. But the conversations that I was having with my clients drastically changed because suddenly they were trying to figure out, how do I lead a virtual team? And how do I like deal with my kids at home who I'm trying to homeschool now over Zoom while also doing my work, while also supporting my colleague who is having their own internal challenges and struggles. And so that was the biggest thing. And what I had never experienced before as a coach was I was dealing with all those same things myself. And so it was a whole new world to try to support and coach and advise my clients while also experiencing the same struggles that they were in the same moments.
Yeah. And that's a whole, as a coach, I'm a coach as well. It's a whole other experience because, they say in coaching, you don't want to be in the water with your clients. You want to be, have that perspective, that, bird's eye view to be able to guide or coach powerfully. But when you are, you hang up, but you're in the same waters, it's a tricky one. It's a tricky one. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. And so what's next? Now that we are in a new world, there's no other way to say it. And you have a podcast for the modern manager, and we are in a modern world. What does life look like right now as we go into the 2022 era of, people call it post-COVID? I think it's just a new world. What's coming up? How are people evolving? Are people going back to work in the offices? Is that required? Like, there's so many conversations around D&I, the diversity and inclusion, and all of that is tapping into the vaccine or no vaccine, because now vaccine is part of an inclusion conversation. Coming back to the office, are we effective or are we not? And there's research around it. Like, it's kind of messy. Help us clarify what's going on there.
Well, I'm not sure I have any brilliant answers, but I'll share what I'm seeing and what I've been talking about with my clients, which is that we are in a new world, which is just the new reality, right? Like, there was a while where we thought about like, we'll get back to normal. And I think after a few months of COVID, we realized that there was not going to be a going back, that this is going to be the new reality. And there's no one right answer for any organization, right? There are some teams who are just, cannot wait to get back together in person. And they aren't facing nearly the same number of challenges around vaccine status or health worries or, childcare or other things. And they just are like so excited to be back together in person and raring to go. And then there are other organizations and other teams where people have moved, right? They picked up during the pandemic and they relocated and they're like, I'm not coming back. Or people have discovered, I love working from home and I don't want to have to go back into the office where there's so many distractions, or I don't want that 45-minute commute each way that I used to do. I really enjoyed getting that extra hour of sleep, or anything else. And managers are now trying to figure out both how to create a hybrid structure for their team, where sometimes they're together, sometimes they're not. Some people are fully remote, some people are always on site. And figuring out how do we do all those things that we used to do when we're now in this, again, a new construct where we're dealing with hybrid. And at the same time, navigate whatever it is that their company is telling them they have to do, which isn't always the same thing that they want. And that has been a big point of contention. If you have an organization who says, we demand that you're vaccinated, we demand you're on site 4 days a week, we demand XYZ, and you as a manager are like, but that's not going to work for my team, right? That's not what I want. Managers end up in a really tough position where they have to sometimes hold the line of their company, sometimes go to their HR and advocate for policy changes, and sometimes work with their team to just figure out how do we make the best of this situation so that we can continue to do the best work that we can do under these conditions.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting times. And I think it calls for a lot of personal leadership on managers, right? And for them to tap into their voice and their capacity to listen and to make decisions and to take a stand for their team, right?
Absolutely. And if you're a small business owner, right, if you're the one who actually gets to be making these decisions, right, you have an opportunity to include your team, the people who you work with, in those decisions, right? Like this doesn't have to be, oh my gosh, it's all resting on my shoulders, which a lot of my small business owner clients often feel like everything in the business is always resting on them. And this is one of those opportunities where they don't have to have all the answers. They can come to their team and say, hey, what do we want our work world to look like going forward? Do we want to have flexible work? Do we want to have work from anywhere policies? Do we want to have FaceTime where we know we're going to get to see each other and build those relationships that only come really deeply from being in person together? Or what else, right? Like, how can we do this together so that you don't have to do it on your own as a manager or as a leader?
I love that. Love that. It is a time for co-creation at all levels. Yes. So let's talk about your big goal. Like, you've been doing this work for a while, and I know you have a lot of things coming up, and we're going to tap into that in a minute. But at the end of the day, if, 10 years from now, and you look back, what did you accomplish?
Oh my gosh, that's such a hard question. Big question, and scary question, right? Like, oh my gosh.
When you're 25, when you're 35.
Yeah. So on a grand scale, the thing that really it feels like my purpose or my mission in life, specifically when it comes to my work world, is to elevate the role of being a people manager to the same kind of level or quality or degree at which being a people leader is. Right? We talk so much. There's a billion books. There's all kinds of courses you can take on being a people leader and how to, galvanize people around a vision and all of those wonderful things, which we absolutely need that leadership out in the world. We need it in our businesses, in our nonprofits, in our politics. But we don't give enough attention to the idea of being a people manager, being in the trenches, right? In some ways, day to day, actually working with people who aren't always like you, who have different personalities and different backgrounds and different perspectives, and bringing those diverse sets of people together and creating an environment where we thrive. Like, that is so critical to actual implementation, to creating whatever it is we're trying to create in the world. And managers just, no one cares about them. They don't get the training. They don't get the respect.
As long as they have the chart done and the KPIs organized and the reporting done on time. I love that, because I think there's a call for leadership at all levels.
Yes, absolutely.
And personal responsibility and personal leadership for sure. But I agree that if that manager can't spark their team, can lead from a place of tapping into the vision of the organization or tapping into understanding that the diversity of their team is where the magic happens, and enhance that, then we are not going to have creative, powerful implementation. We just won't.
Exactly.
I love that. I love turning managers into leaders.
Yeah, exactly.
So what's cooking for the next 12 months?
Well, I got a lot of stuff going on. Podcast is running strong. I'm continuing to do that weekly. And I just started, or I should say restarted, working on my second book. So I had big plans to work on it during the pandemic, and like many things, plans got foiled. So I'm finally getting back into writing my second book, doing more coaching, hopefully doing some more meeting trainings and some in-person trainings. I would love to get back into the swing of things. And otherwise, just kind of humming along. Like, I feel like after 2 years of pandemic, I don't want to have a crazy big year. I want to have a year of stability where I can enjoy my work. I can enjoy the clients I work with. I can, get back into the swing of life without too much pressure, which, I think we're seeing it around the world, right? With the great resignation and people, jumping off ship because work was just so much over the past 2 years. Life was just so much and people ready for a break. And I am fully on board with a little balance in our lives.
I love that. I am on the same boat, sister. This is a big year for us. I'm turning 50 in 25 wedding anniversary, we're thinking of big plans and big trips, which I love. And we just went to Israel for a vacation and I hurt my back. And I'm like, what if we just get the backyard beautiful and we plan a lot of dinners with friends in our backyard and I don't get on a plane and I go to the beach all summer and take time every Friday off. Like there's something about just, keeping it cool, keeping it not high pressure. So I'm there with you.
Yeah. Well, happy birthday and congratulations.
July.
Those are exciting milestones.
I turned 50 and the next day it's our 25th wedding anniversary. And for me, it's a big one because I got married at 25, obviously, but that will mark the day where I would have lived half of my life in Argentina and half of my life here. It's like, because we got married and I moved here. So it's kind of like, where are you from? By August, it's like, I don't know, because I now have lived longer in the US. It's just strange. It feels really strange because I'll always be a foreigner here. And I'm probably always going to be a foreigner at home as well, because now I have an accent even in Spanish. So anyway, that's a good story. So what is a book, podcast, or maybe Netflix series or something we must follow or watch?
Ooh, so many options. All right. Well, of course, I have to say my podcast. If you like podcasts and you're listening to this one, you should definitely check out The Modern Manager. But really, I feel like one of the books that was most influential and helpful in my own personal development and growth was a classic, David Allen's Getting Things Done. And there's actually a particular concept. I mean, there's so many good things in the book, but a particular concept that I hear my mantra in my head every single day, which is our minds are for having ideas, not holding ideas. And I have become such an avid writer down. I write everything down because otherwise I will forget it. And I used to think, only old people have to write things down, right? If your brain is strong, you can remember everything. And that book really reminded me, or kind of taught me this lesson, that we need to have clarity in our brains, right? Speaking of clarity of purpose, you have to have clarity in your mind if you're going to be effective in your daily practices of whatever it is and get your daily work done. And so the more that I can get ideas out of my head or get my to-do list out of my head and onto paper, the more effective I can be in my work as a parent, as a friend, as a community member, et cetera. So that book, if you haven't read it, it's a big one, but it has so many wonderful concepts and practices that I think apply to anyone in any role. So David Allen's Getting Things Done.
Love that. I love that. And I love this, what you shared, because my next question is, I love to leave our listeners with an action, because Masters in Clarity podcast is really all about the clarity journey. But what is clarity without intentional action? So I would say, let's give our listeners the request to take action and to bring things from their head to either paper, iPad. There's so many ways to bring your ideas down so that you can, not overcharge your brain with thoughts that you're trying to hold. And then there's more room for clarity.
Absolutely. And I'll give one more action just because I can't help but throw in an effective meeting practice here, especially when it relates to clarity. And this is the number one thing that I teach anyone who asks me anything about meetings. This is the number one practice you can do to make your meetings more effective. And it really is about having clarity. So for most of us, when we think about why am I having a meeting, the answer is always a verb. To catch up on this, to check in on this, to discuss this, to review this. And those are great activities, but they're not the objective of their meeting. They're not the outcome the meeting is driving towards. So the question you really want to ask yourself is, what will this meeting achieve? At the end of the meeting, when we have just spent 25 or 30 minutes or an hour, what will we walk away with? What will the outcome be? And if you can clarify what the outcome is, and it could be a list of questions that we need to go answer, a decision on how to move forward, a plan for our next steps of who's going to do what by when. It could even just be like we're all on the same page. We have alignment on this complex situation. Whatever that outcome is, if you know what you're trying to achieve in the meeting, you can then make sure you've got the right people there, you've got the right agenda and activities of things you're going to discuss, and the whole meeting can drive towards that outcome. And you will often discover that if you can't figure out what the meeting is going to achieve, you probably didn't need to have the meeting. If it's just a discussion, yeah, could have been done as an email, right? You didn't actually need the meeting. So that's the number one action I would recommend is look at your calendar, see what meetings you have coming up, and ask yourself, what is this meeting going to achieve? At the end of the meeting, what are we going to have? And if you're not the meeting leader, if you were invited to the meeting and you're looking at that on your calendar and going, I don't know what that meeting's going to achieve, I encourage you to reach out to that meeting leader, to the organizer, and say, hey, I saw this coming up on the calendar. I want to make sure I'm prepared to contribute. What do you hope the meeting will achieve? Or what do you hope the meeting will accomplish? And let them figure out for themselves and respond back to you so that you know what they're driving towards.
I love that. I love that. And this is all around the leadership on intention, that every single thing that you embark on a daily basis is geared towards the intentional outcome. So love
exactly.
that. Where can people find you?
So you can find my podcast, The Modern Manager, pretty much anywhere there's podcasts. It's also the website, The Modern Manager. And you can find out about my coaching at mamieks.com. And you can find about meetings at Meteor, Meeteor.com. And then social media, pretty much, all the good places.
Awesome. Any parting thoughts before we part ways?
I just loved this conversation. I'm so glad that we got to chat again. And I hope you'll link to your episode where I got to interview you on my show so that people can hear all of your wisdom in that space.
Yeah, I'd make sure my team does that. And then when we send you all the stuff, you can do that. But we can edit that, guys.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Mamie, for showing up today, for bringing your energy and your insights around turning managers into leaders. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been such a pleasure.
Okay, I just finished this amazing interview with Mamie, and here's what I want you to pay attention to as you listen to this episode. She gave 2 specific tips. One around effective meeting, which you cannot miss. It's so simple, and it will change your life around hosting and attending meetings. And the other tip she gave was all around how to get our mind to clear up so that we can continue having creative ideas while moving forward. So if you've been struggling with an overload head with so much stuff that you can't make sense of it, or you've been struggling with meetings that don't get the outcomes that you want, then listening to this episode, you do not want to miss it.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Masters in Clarity. If you loved today's show, please subscribe to our podcast and leave us a review. Share this episode with 2 people in your world, and as a gift, go to mastersinclarity.com/free to download free Clarity resources. Join your host, Dolores Hirschmann, next time to continue forging a clear path to your impactful success.